Welcome to Matosinhos. This is where tradition meets modernity, where the land and sea have been dancing together for centuries, giving rise to an amazing safe haven. But it's also a port of highly representative departures and arrivals, and this is one of its most relevant openings, the beach. One of the most iconic beaches in Portugal, where Europe meets the ocean. It is one of the most privileged and inviting places of the Porto metropolitan area. A place for leisure and to enjoy the summer when the weather is warm. During the year, this beach becomes the stage of the most diverse water sports activities, especially surfing. Located next to the largest fishing port in the country and for many years the largest sardine port in the world, this beach often became the set for great tragedies too, like the one that took place on December 1st, 1947, the greatest tragedy ever recorded on the Portuguese coast. The storm and the ferocious sea killed 152 fishermen, casting pain and despair among the community, forever depicted in the sculpture of José João Brito, inspired by the canvas of the neorealist painter Augusto Gomes. Right next to it stands one of the gigantic piers of the port of Leixões, more than 1,500 meters of granite breaking right into the sea. Built between 1884 and 1895, it is part of the largest engineering endeavor carried out in Portugal in the 19th century, which gave rise to the largest artificial port in the country, a vital structure for the north of Portugal and the national economy. The port of Leixões continues to grow. Trade, industry, cruise liners, military, fishery, oil, a giant container park. In addition to all of this, the port of Leixões also hosts important leisure facilities, namely the prominent Porto Atlântico Marina, with around 250 mooring points for recreational vessels. This modern and properly qualified marina is managed by 3 historical yacht clubs, providing a set of supplementary services like bars, restaurants, and training facilities. Since ancient times, the land has always been part of Matosinhos, not just the sea. This fact is clearly documented by a remarkable collection of national monuments, such as the medieval monastery of Lessa do Balio. Since the 12th century, this monument has been the Portuguese base for the mighty religious and military order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, the Hospitallers. The monastery church dates back to the first half of the 14th century and is one of the first Gothic-style churches in the northern part of the country, the architecture of light, a stage for relevant historical events, namely the famous royal wedding between Dom Fernando and Dona Leonor Teles. Also from medieval times, coming from the ancient era of the late 12th century, is the image of Bom Jesus de Matosinhos, the origin of an eminent devotion and one of the largest Portuguese pilgrimages. This sculpture is the oldest life-size image of Christ in Portugal and rests in the surprising and beautiful chapel of the Church of Matosinhos, an exceptional Baroque creation of the 18th century. The temple is dated from the 16th century, but it was profoundly renovated by the genius of one of the most fabulous Baroque architects ever to work in Portugal, the Italian Nicolau Nasoni, famously known for his works, namely the Torre dos Clérigos. Also famous is the obelisk that stands since 1840 on the beach of Memória, a natural area of great beauty alongside a protected zone of sand dunes. This beach and its monument are the guardians of the Memoria, which means memory, of a landing on July 8, 1832 that would determine the history of Portugal in a decisive manner, the Army of Liberation of King Dom Pedro IV and the ultimate defeat of absolutism in Portugal, a place and a moment that the writer Almeida Garré, who was actually part of this army, classified as the time when the old Portugal ends and the new one begins. Landing on this coast was not an easy task. Due to its dangerousness and a long-time absence of efficient signage, it became known as the Black Coast. In 1962, this situation changed significantly when the lighthouse of Lessa da Palmeira was erected in the rocky area of Boa Nova, becoming the second tallest lighthouse on the Portuguese coast. With almost 50 meters in height, its light reaches a distance greater than 50 kilometers, thus becoming a pivotal landmark not only for the maritime navigation but also for fishermen, whom, in these seas filled with biodiversity and nutrients that rise from the ocean depths, catch excellent fish and shellfish. Featuring unique flavors and aromas, such products have not gone unnoticed by distinguished chefs and lovers of good seafood who have labeled Matosinhos as the world's best fish. And so the city is today one of the best dining rooms in the country, with a great number of restaurants and seafood houses in the vicinity of the fishing port and fish market. The municipal market is one of the special places to buy the fish of Matosinhos and feel the heart of the local fishing community. Apart from the fish stalls, one should and must experience all the other flavors and scents, as well as the pioneering architecture of the building, conceived in the 1930s by the Ars office. At that time it was perceived as a modernist project, bold and innovative, using concrete as a construction material, paying close attention to the passage of natural light into the market. One must not fail to contemplate, high up, the emblematic and monumental dome that covers the indoor area. Other iconic areas of this relationship of Matosinhos with fish are the canning factories. There were more than 50 of them, especially in the southern part of the city. One of the most historic companies in the sector, founded in 1920, is still working today. It is called Pinhais e Companhia Limitada. Considered to be the Rolls-Royce of preserves, this factory continues to produce a large part of its canned fish in its own traditional and artisanal manner, most of which is destined for exports. The industrial building is one of the most beautiful in the city, and it stands not far away from the first modern factory to be installed in the city. Founded in 1899, the gigantic complex of Real Vinícola. This property reopened its doors in 2017, after it was renovated by the municipality of Matosinhos. It still holds many of its original characteristics, and it is considered a priceless symbol from the industrial period. It has also been transformed into an international reference building, the House of Architecture. In addition to exhibitions, lectures, workshops, and other initiatives related to the dissemination and appreciation of architecture, it also hosts one of the greatest ambassadors of the city, the world-renowned Matosinhos Jazz Orchestra. is no coincidence that the House of Architecture was born here. Matosinhos is a national and international reference for architecture today. There are many awards by some of the most respected Portuguese architects. Alcino Soutinho, for example, the architect who conceived this building of the council chambers inaugurated in 1987, filled inside with traditional Portuguese materials, namely wood and tile, in a sea evoking blue. This property was the first large building built in Portugal after the democratic revolution of the 25th of April 1974. And the principles of democracy and transparency were properly shaped in this sessions room without walls and visible to those who pass outside. But in Matosinhos there are also works by other famous architects, such as Fernando Távora or Eduardo Soto de Moura, but the most famous one is a native of Matosinhos, Álvaro Siza Vieira, Pritzker Prize and the most awarded Portuguese architect. He has several works in his homeland. One of them, a national monument, is the Boa Nova Tea House, built between 1958 and 1963 upon request of the City Council. The simplicity of the lines and the care with the integration of the architecture in the surrounding rocky and maritime environment are abundant in this paradigm of Caesar's work. The tea house is today an absolute reference as a Michelin-starred restaurant, where the products of the sea are the inspiring force. Said inspiration was also used by the American sculptor Janet Eckelman, who conceived one of the most iconic symbols of Matosinhos, the sculpture She Changes, inaugurated in 2005 and popularly and immediately renamed the Anemone. Fishing traps and small circular nets used by local fishing communities served as inspiration for this gigantic installation that bustles with the breeze, thus justifying its designation. Architecturally inspired by maritime elements, namely in the moorings and cables coiled on the piers, the recent cruise terminal of Leixões is a project by Luís Pedro Silva and was inaugurated in 2015. Combined with its avant-garde shape, the building's coating was inspired by one of the most traditional Portuguese decorative materials, the tile. A million of them, manufactured by the historic porcelain factory Vista Alegre. From the top of this building, which also hosts a large set of laboratories related to the aquatic sciences of the University of Porto, we can contemplate a unique panoramic view. Over the ocean, over the port of Leixões, over the beach, and over Matosinhos, this haven that welcomes the taste and knowledge of the best fish and the genius of some of the best contemporary artists. Come visit Matosinhos, get swept away by this safe haven.